The Still Loading podcast is brought to you by the wonderful people on Patreon. Amazing people like Kevin from the Bit by Bit Foundation, Gilmer, Stephen P., Melissa S., Matt aka Stormageddon, Pib Extra, and Mr. Biscuits have all been wonderful enough to support the show over there. So if you would also like to get your name read at the beginning of an episode along with a bunch of other goodies, go over to patreon.com/stillloadingpod and check out everything it has to offer. On this episode of Still Loading, fuck you, Tommy Tallarico.
Shockingly, I do get that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I'm your host, Josh Koval, and today's episode, we are talking about our first Metroid game on the podcast. Honestly, I'm shocked it's this one, not because this game is bad. I actually very much enjoyed it, but usually I like to go chronologically, but I was in the middle of playing through my games for backlog month later this year, and it's very RPG heavy, and I needed something to kind of break up that RPG turn-based stuff, and I was like, you know what? I'm feeling Metroid Prime. I never beat it. Let me go back to it and try to beat it, and that's a little teaser for my personal history that I'll get into in a little bit. But decided to replay it, beat it in 6 days, which is crazy fast for me. Normally it takes me a lot longer to beat games because, parenting. But here we are to talk about Metroid Prime, and I'm really excited to discuss this game. And joining me, returning to the show for the first time in a while, is my friend Chris, aka the British Bond Addict. Chris, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastically. It's great to be back. I love this podcast anyway. But to be back again without the excuse of Bond, it's wonderful.
Yeah, you're always on for the Bond stuff. I did try to get you on for the Still Family episode, but just scheduling and whatnot. So I'm happy to get you on for this, though. I think the last time you were on was Spyro the Dragon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the gaming ones I've done so far have been Mario Galaxy and Spyro. Both.
And The World's Not Enough. Oh, sorry, Tomorrow Never Dies.
Tomorrow Never Dies. Yes, that's it. That's exactly it. Yes, you're correct.
I always go to The World's Not Enough because that was my personal favorite N64 Bond game. I still will die on the hill that it's better than GoldenEye, but that's a hot take for a different day. I'll just let the people rage on that if they so choose to. But yeah, man, thank you for coming on the show again. It's been a while, and I'm happy to have you back. I guess to start off though, Metroid Prime, like, what's your experience with it? Like when you saw me. I was posting on Instagram like, oh, I'm playing this on Twitch, come in and watch me play and whatnot. You mentioned there that you were a huge fan of this game, so let's kind of talk about your personal experience with it.
Well, Metroid has always been one of the Nintendo franchises that's been kind of for a long time was on the outside of my knowledge. Like, I'm a big Mario fan, I'm a big Zelda fan, I'm a big Star Fox fan. And obviously in all of these Smash Brothers games, there's always, Samus. And it was one where I'd always wanted to play a Metroid game, but this was like middle 2000s, like 2008, 2007, that sort of thing. And there weren't really any about because the last game had been, I think, Super Metroid in 1994. Then they re-released, the last game, not GameCube. I'll say that. Then they released the Metroid Prime trilogy on the Nintendo Wii. And I was very lucky that I got that for my birthday. And it's the entire trilogy, all 3 games. And I was so happy to finally play it because I'd heard so much about it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed 1. I thought 2 was okay. Really enjoyed 3 as well. And then it kind of just sat to the wayside for a bit. I played it. That was good. Recently, about 2 or 3 years ago, I played through Super Metroid on the Nintendo Switch Online service, and I had a blast of a time. I loved Super Metroid, and that will come up a little bit later as well. And it's made me realize that this podcast is actually an opportunity to realize if I should invest in the remaster for the Switch. So, if this podcast goes well, Josh, I will be investing in the remaster of Metroid Prime. So, no pressure.
I mean, then I'm gonna. I don't know if I should purposely tank it to save you money, or or make sure that you spend as much goddamn money as possible. We'll see. But no, I'm glad that you agreed to come on for this. That's interesting. Like, I also kind of have a similar background with Metroid as you, where it was always kind of on my peripheral for a while. I first was introduced to Samus in Smash because, I didn't really, my parents didn't buy me, an NES or a Super Nintendo growing up, so I missed out on a lot of that stuff. And then I remember, like, I knew Samus was from Metroid, and I never really played Metroid. I remember my buddy Tristan having a GameCube, and he was one that also introduced me to Wind Waker, which I talked about just a few weeks ago. And he also introduced me to this game, Metroid Prime. Man, this really seems to be like the summer of Tristan here, just kind of talking about, like, I should have had him on for one of these episodes. Now I feel bad. I'll have to just get him on for something. Anyway, so he introduced me to Metroid Prime, and specifically, like, I remember him, one of the things he really, like, laid into in a good way, like, he really wanted to, like, me to take notice of, was the menu screen and how visually appealing, like, kind of like the the germs or whatever it is, like the molecular stuff that you see in the background of this, how it looks, because it looks very crisp, like very clean, very, like, it's a really, like, he was like, look at these graphics, and now I realize that it's probably just like a video that's being looped in the background, but it still looks really crisp, especially considering it's on a GameCube, right? So that's like one of my first memories of him showing it to me. And I remember him showing it to me, and I was like, he showed me Samus's, like, suit, because, as you play through the game, your suit upgrades and changes color and changes looks and everything. And he's like, look how badass this is. And I was, at the time, I was very kind of snooty. I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. But in my head, I'm like, why do I care? I don't know why I was like that. I was honestly kind of a shitty friend. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I did not take enough
he's not
interest.
anymore. He's a great friend now.
Now I tell him to their face instead of keeping it to my. No, but I had such a hard time just being happy for my friends' enjoyment and other things, and I was never, like, mean about it, but I didn't relish in it. Now I'm a little bit better at that. But I remember that. I vividly remember that, and it didn't really do much for me at the moment. And then I remember getting my own GameCube from my friend Micah. I bought his GameCube off of him. I bought Metroid Prime off of him, a bunch with a bunch of other games. I think he sold to me for, like, I think I want to say I spent like $25 on, like, it was like $5 for the GameCube and $5 for each game type of thing, which was, like, crazy. So I bought the GameCube from him, and then I finally started playing Metroid Prime. And my first experience with it, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. I loved my first like, genuine and earnest playthrough of the game. And what made me stop, why I never beat it, is I got far. It's when you get to the fusion Metroids at the very end, where you shoot them and they split into two different ones, and they're color coded. That scared the fuck out of me, because all my go-to strategy was just super bomb them, because it was an easy way to take them out, so then I wouldn't have to deal with the fusion Metroids. And I stand by the fact that they are a shitty fucking enemy, and we'll get to that in the game. I have major issues that I will be angry about later on. But for now, that was why I stopped, and then never touched it again. I did not come back to it until this summer, when I was like, man, I need something to change a pace in my gaming here. I'm going too RPG heavy this year. For those who may not have seen it in my previous episodes, I covered a bunch of Mario RPG games all for Mario Month this year. And then 2 out of my 4 backlog month episodes are RPGs. And then on top of that, one of my patrons voted for Final Fantasy X-2 for one of my patron polls, which while that is an RPG, it's not their fault that it's an RPG because I picked all RPGs for that poll. I just, for some reason, I was still in a mood then. That was a mistake. I should not have like loaded so many RPGs into my summer, but here we are. So Metroid Prime was a nice break, and I beat it finally. I did, in fact, beat it for this episode, and I enjoyed my time very much. And we'll get to all that in more detail. But before we dive into the gameplay, into the story, and into the world, and all that good stuff, I got some fun facts to go into. So a little bit of the development to talk about, and
Ooh.
this game was developed by Retro Studios, which is an American studio, which at the time initially was not owned by Nintendo. Now they are owned by Nintendo. They are considered a first party company or first party developer for Nintendo. The current president, Michael Kelbaugh, was the president during Metroid Prime, or no, he stepped in when Nintendo took over, and so he's been president for them ever since 2002. So he's been their president since Metroid bought out Retro Studios mid development of Metroid Prime. The producer was one of the producers is Shigeru Miyamoto, of course.
Of course.
He had a pretty strong hand with this. The game initially came out on November 18th, 2002 in North America. In Japan, it came out on February 28th, 2003. And for you, Chris, over in Europe, it came out on March 21st, 2003. And then, of course, it did get ported over to the Wii in terms of the trilogy on February 19th, 2000. Oh, no, sorry. There's just a port of it, a straight up port for the Wii that was only released in Japan, apparently. Obviously, you have the Metroid trilogy that came out over in North America, and I'm assuming over for you in the UK as well on the Wii.
It was limited edition release in the UK. That's why it was a very significant present, because it was a very hard to get game.
I mean, it was hard to get here in the US even. I don't know if it was a limited release, but it's still considered like a collector's piece, you know?
I wonder if it's the same as the... I've got the 3D Mario All-Stars collection for the Switch. I wonder if it's a similar thing as that, where they released it for a little bit and then for no reason went, nope, no more, we're not going to do it for no reason whatsoever.
I'm not quite sure. I don't know.
I've got both, so I'm basically the Nintendo chess master.
Well, there you go. There is a Metroid Prime remastered, an HD remaster that came out for the Switch on February 9th, 2023, and that was released worldwide released digitally worldwide on February 9th, 2023, with a physical release in North America on the 22nd and a physical release in Europe and Japan on March 3rd. Metroid is one of those interesting series where it's historically been more popular in the US than it has been in Japan, I believe. From what I can tell. Same thing with actually Zelda, believe it or not. Like Zelda is not nearly as popular in Japan, though apparently Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have done very well for them. But like the attach rate is a lot higher in the US than it is in Japan. From my understanding, listeners, if I'm wrong with that, feel free to call me out on it. But that's just from what I remember hearing. There was no research or hard numbers I can provide on that. The game was in development for about 3 years, and it was the first game that Nintendo worked very closely with a Western dev on. Pretty much they worked hand in hand. And originally
it was in Texas, right? Wasn't it?
Yes, they're based out of Texas. Texas. They were originally working on a different game, a third-person shooter game, and Miyamoto saw it and convinced them to switch over to a Metroid game. And they previously, like their experience in working with third-person shooters, they did help Rare on Jet Force Gemini in at least a small capacity.
I tell you what, bizarrely, and I will call back to this later, that sounds very similar to how Star Fox Adventures came around. I'll come back to Star Fox later, but Star Fox was a completely different game called Dinosaur Planet, and then Shigeru was like, we can make this a game based on one of our
IP. We can make this Stairfax. Yeah. I don't know why I'm saying things in weird ways right now, but whatever. They could make it Star Fox, and you're absolutely right. And there's a couple interesting things about Retro Studios, though. Prime had a really troubled development cycle. At one point in time, basically when they were making Metroid Prime, there was a 9-month crunch period where like developers were doing like what did the one guy say, like it was like 72-hour weeks or some shit like that. There'd be, or sorry, not 72-hour, 72-hour weeks. It's almost like eight, that's almost double a normal work week, right? And there'd be
Yeah.
times where they would literally do 48-hour work shifts with maybe an hour of sleep in between. It happened more than once, one developer was saying, which is just crazy. Now, before Retro Studios came into existence in 1998, it was founded by an alliance between Nintendo. I'm reading this part directly off of Wikipedia, so don't come at me. But it was an alliance between Nintendo and industry vet Jeff Spangenberg. Jeff Spangenberg previously worked at Iguana Entertainment, who they have a crazy history of development for Nintendo consoles, man. Like they made Turok Dinosaur Hunter for the N64.
Oh, no way.
They did a lot of like NHL Breakaway 99. They also made South Park for the N64, which is kind of crazy.
Insane draw distance on that game.
Also going back into the Genesis and Super Nintendo, or sorry, Mega Drive for you Brits, for the Mega Drive and Super Nintendo era, they did Arrow the Acrobat. They did both of those games. They did Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. They also ported NBA Jam. Like Iguana Entertainment had their hands in a lot of stuff. They eventually became part of Acclaim Entertainment in '95, or they changed names. Okay. I want to say. They eventually became Acclaim. Yeah, they were Iguana Entertainment from 91 to 99 and Acclaim Studios Austin from 99 to 2004. So
Iguana's
Jeff Spangenberg.
a cooler name.
What, sorry?
Iguana's a cooler name.
I agree entirely. And Jeff Spangenberg was the founder, at least according to Wikipedia, of Iguana. Now, Jeff Spangenberg is a notorious figure in game history because he pretty much was forced out of Retro Studios due to being a toxic piece of shit. He is one of the reasons the crunch was so bad on Metroid Prime. In fact, the developers wanted to quit. From what I was reading, there's an interview with a YouTube channel or a podcast called Kiwi Talks, where one of the devs talked about how one of the devs literally wanted to quit. Like most of them were considering leaving, but when Nintendo bought out Spangenberg and forced him out of the company and basically made Retro a first-party studio and then put Michael Kelbaugh in charge, the morale turned around entirely. Jeff Spangenberg, infamously, because of its firing or like for being forced out at Retro Studios, would go on to start his own studios, another studio called Top Heavy Studios, which created a game, only one game ever, before it ended up getting shut down, called The Guy Game.
I've seen that. That's based off like Girls Gone Wild, right?
Kind of, yeah. And the reason why there's never been another game is because it features there's lots of it's rated M for very obvious reasons.
Wasn't one of the people in it underage?
That's why it is illegal to own this game, because one of the girls on it was under 18 and they shot her. I don't know if she was nude or not. I know nothing about the game, about the Guy Game. I just know that it is wildly problematic.
Yes, I will clarify, audience. The only reason I've heard about this is from YouTube videos about controversial games. I have never played, invested, or even seen this game, so please don't come after me.
Yeah, and dude, you nailed it with the girls. No pun intended with the nail part, but you nailed it with the Girls Gone Wild thing. It was because Spangenberg sought to create an interactive game with the appeal of men inspired by Girls Gone Wild. Like he directly went for that. Apparently one of the reasons Spangenberg even departed, one of the other reasons for his departure, besides being a piece of shit, was he was frequently absent and he used Retro Studios servers to host websites that featured pictures of scantily clad women.
Jesus Christ. Sounds like a real
dude's
POS.
Just a piece of shit all around. Like this guy is not a good dude. So yeah, Metroid Prime, it's wild how great the game turned out, considering that, that backdrop, right? Like the backdrop of Spangenberg being I was trying to find a pun about like turning like Spangenberg into like a Spangen piece of shit, but it doesn't quite, I don't know, doesn't work well. The other less, it's still problematic, but less problematic, is Tommy Tallarico, as I very
Oh,
subtly
yeah.
alluded to in the intro, in the tag for this episode, the opening tag. Tommy Tallarico, his studio, like his audio company, did some light work on this game. Like they did some of the sound effects,
Okay.
and Tommy Tallarico has played up on the fact that he was a major part in Metroid Prime. Like it's one of the credits. He credits doing like almost like working on the music and all this other stuff when he didn't. He honestly, I don't even think it's not even that he's like exaggerating it. I think he's just straight up lying, because they flat out got Kenji Yamamoto, who was the composer for the original Metroid, I believe, or at least Super Metroid, to come back and do the music for this game. So Tommy Tallarico's studio did work on the game, but he had very limited help. He had very limited like interaction with it, from what I can tell. Like, because you can't trust anything Tommy says because he's a serial liar. But it is,
Oh, God, yeah.
it's just wild to me how much controversy is surrounding this game between Spangenberg and Tallarico, and the game turned out phenomenal. And like Retro Studios went on to be a very successful studio for Nintendo. They did Metroid Prime. They did all the Metroid Prime games, right? They did 1, 2, Hunters for the DS, which I know got some mixed reviews. 3, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, and the trilogy. But then they did Donkey Kong Country Returns in 2010. They also, I don't know if they were the primary developers or just part of it, but they worked on Mario Kart 7 for the 3DS. They did Donkey Kong Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And that was the last you saw of them, because they made it in 2014 and they ported it to the Switch in 2018. And now they are working on their Metroid Prime 4 is finally coming out, and they did Metroid Prime Remastered. So they've been around for quite some time, and while they don't necessarily release a crazy amount of games, the games they do release are high quality. Donkey Kong Country Returns is an immensely popular game. A lot of people enjoy it. Same with Tropical Freeze, and obviously people are very hyped about Metroid Prime 4.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Gosh, yeah. But the longest awaited game of all time.
When was it announced? Wasn't it announced in like 2017 or some shit like that? Like it was a while ago.
We're closing in on 10 years.
Yeah, it was announced under the working title Metroid Prime 4 at E3 2017. So by the time it comes out, it will be 8 years.
Jesus.
Just about 8 years waiting for Prime 4.
That's insane.
I know, right? It's crazy. So yeah, that's just a little bit of the history that I have. I specifically, like, the Spangenberg thing is just a really wild story, and the dude has not made a game since, as far as I can tell. I should check. Has he done anything since? I think he's a retired game designer at this point. But yeah, he's not really even involved from what I can tell. Let me see. Does he have any other credits? Not that I can see, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I'll have to see. Maybe he has some credits on Moby Games or something like that. But
Okay.
yeah, it's crazy. It's really crazy how well this game did, considering the fact that there's so much stuff going on behind the scenes. It is really crazy. But yeah, so let's dive into the game now. Unless you have anything else to add, Chris.
Nothing based on history. I've got a lot to add about the game.
All right, well, let's go right into it then. I've been talking a whole lot, so I want to throw it over to you first, man. We'll start off with the gameplay. What are your thoughts on it? Like, what are some things you want to highlight? What do you want to talk about with it?
There's so many things about this game that I love. I mean, granted, it's got quite a few things I will also, talk against as well. But There's something about for me the history of how Nintendo jumped to 3D, and we had Mario going into 3D, we had Link going into 3D, we even had like Star Fox jumping into 3D. I mean, granted, Star Fox was always technically 3D, but we had the comparison. It was interesting to me that Metroid waited, because I'm a huge, huge fan of Super Metroid, which I think is a phenomenal game. And it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting that they didn't take the leap in the N64 era. And I think it was a right choice, because I think if they did a FPS style Metroid game back in the N64, it wouldn't have worked, because it needed a separate level of detail. Although that's one thing that comes to my mind. Do you consider this a first person shooter? Because I really don't.
It is in a purely mechanical sense, not
Yeah.
in spirit.
No, for me, it's like it's an FPP. It's a first person puzzler.
Or an FPA, first person adventure.
Yes, that's exactly it. I mean, I would say right now my favorite thing about this game is just how solitary it is, and that's what I love about Super Metroid 2. This game, you're entirely alone, and you feel that throughout the entire game. The entirety of Time 4, like granted, apart from the scan uploaded or whatever it says, you have no dialogue whatsoever, and I love that so much. Like even the tutorial level, you kind of figure stuff out yourself. You got a few hints and tips here and there, but just how alone the game is. And of course, Nintendo, this is too early for like multiplayer gameplay stuff like that online. But just the fact you do play this solitary game alone, and the music reinforces this, the gameplay reinforces this, and just the perspective of who you are as a lone kind of bounty hunter, I guess is what you call Samus, but in this case, adventurer. You feel so lonely, and in consideration to stuff like Alien Isolation, which is also a game that's come out recently, I got the same vibe when I played that, and I think there are huge comparisons to be drawn between Alien and Metroid. I mean, for
Oh,
example,
it's not even subtle, man. Like the storylines are almost identical. It Metroid was very much like the series in general is very intentionally inspired by Alien. But sorry,
oh
continue.
yeah. Well, I think because Super Metroid, the intro sequence is a direct copy of the Alien 3 intro,
Mm-hmm.
where it's a brief clip of footage, black screen with text, brief clip of footage, black screen with text. I will say that I think Super Metroid on the SNES is better, but I had such a good time with Metroid Prime. Just the entire journey, you get hooked. Like I imagine, I think you said you got hooked when you realize, like, if you can get over the backtracking, it's such an easy game to sink your teeth into.
I don't think Metroid, like that's part of the experience is backtracking to get back to areas that you were once before. And I don't mind it at all. There's one area of the game where I very much mind it. We'll get into that in a little bit, but yeah, I think that solitary feeling that you're talking about, Chris, is very much spot on. I feel like the Metroid games, for the most part, I've never played Other M, but I know that one's very different than the
Whoa.
rest. So we'll kind of we won't count that one, but it's very that's very intentional, and I think it the not to get into the music too early on, but the music really perfectly lends itself to that. Like it
Mhm.
builds the atmosphere so expertly, and the gameplay really reinforces that too. I also think that what's interesting about it is that there's not a lot of enemies in the game. Like there's a decent amount, but
Mhm.
it's not like a first person shooter amount where there's like let's spray and pray. But it works on a number of different ways. One, I think it adds to that solitary feeling where like the only things you really can encounter for the most part are things that are going to hurt you. Even the fucking fireflies hurt you, right? Like everything is like you are alone. But it also serves an another purpose as well, where um the controls for this game are interesting on the GameCube, right?
Mhm.
And what I think is so interesting is that it shouldn't work. Like if you're used to first person controls now, this is very foreign, right? It's the left joystick moves you forward, moves you backwards, looks left and looks right. It does not strave.
Mm.
You can kind of do some strafing stuff when you do a lock on with the R button, but that's really about it. Um, but even then you can't move, like you can't turn anymore when you do that. So it's a
That was a big
single.
benefit to playing it on the Wii because the Wii Mote essentially was the pointer for the gun, and that solved a lot of issues. I think the way I've played it, I know you can play with those controls on the Switch Remastered Edition. I think the way I played it might have been the ultimate way to play it because even with twin joysticks, it still were a little bit awkward. I never had a single issue with the Wii Mote; it worked perfectly.
That's very comforting to hear, because one of the reasons, I mean, I've never played Metroid Prime 2, but I've been afraid to try Metroid Prime 3 because of the Wii controls. So that's very comforting to know that it works well with the Wii. But
Oh, so well.
what I was going to say was the controls aren't bad though. That's the crazy thing. Like the controls for what we are used to now should not work, but they do for a number of different reasons. The big one is that they very intentionally designed the game around the limitations of this control scheme. They are not throwing a lot of enemies at you. They don't make you rely on twitch reflexes for the most part. There's a
Mm.
handful of things where you have to kind of do some twitch reflex stuff, but it is nothing that's going to that the controls hinder you at. It's all easily done for you, or it's all something that you could easily do if you practice.
Yeah, no, I think it's one thing. It's hard for me to compare because I never played it on the GameCube. I know certain things like the missile launcher for the arm cannon. Like, it was easier on the GameCube because of how close the proximity of the Y button to the A button was, whilst on the Wiimote, it was the A button to the down button of the D-pad. But it's one thing as well. You got to consider that 2002, we're right on the cusp of first-person shooters taking over the gaming catalog, essentially. Like, we're still in that weird transitional period. Like, I've been playing GoldenEye since as long as I can remember, and that's a one joystick game, and that feels so alien now. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
Nintendo were trying to understand what would be the best method, and even though Nintendo have had a history of weird controllers, the GameCube controller was still probably one of the most conventional. I think it was just a weird aspect of we hadn't quite figured out that the right stick can turn, the right stick turns, the left stick
Mm-hmm.
moves, and using that as an aiming input. But then having the right trigger being the kind of like solo aim mode, and then specifically aiming through that, I think saved that.
Yes, and sorry, the left trigger is the one that does the strafing. The right trigger is the solo aim mode. You're right.
My apologies.
No, you had it right. It was the
Oh,
right trigger does the solo aim mode. The left trigger is the one that kind of like what left trigger does a lock on, if I'm remembering correctly.
okay.
So the controls are just interesting because they really like. I really feel like I should hate them, and I don't. I actually think they work really well, and I really enjoy how it feels overall. Even like switching over once you get the morph ball. And I guess for those who have not played a Metroid game or don't know how it's structured, it is the progenitor of the Metroidvania genre. Metroid is it's in the fucking name, Metroidvania, right? So it's a lot of exploring an environment, getting new abilities, and then using those abilities to get access to new parts of the environment that you were not able to go to before. So you will explore through the world and be like, huh, that looks interesting. Why can't I get to that yet? And then you'll get a power up and realize, oh shit, that's how I get to that spot now.
Yeah,
Now I understand what to do here, type of thing.
that was the reason I came here before and couldn't quite figure out this puzzle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that's also important to remember when you're playing the game, not only because of like remembering to go back to different locations, but if you're stuck somewhere, because a lot of times when I would get stuck, I would be like, why can't I figure out what I need to do with this? And lo and behold, is just trying out some of the abilities that you have, like
Mm.
just figure, like they're not going to give it to you right off the bat. You have to take a few hits, which you get plenty of health to do because it's a Metroid game. You get tons of energy tanks. So you have to take a few hits so you can experiment and try new things out. Like the game really wants you to, like Metroid as a genre, the Metroid games as a series, excuse me, really just wants you to tinker and experiment with all the different things that you can, all the different tools and abilities they give you. And that's why Metroid speedrunning is one of the most popular games to speedrun. Like
Oh,
the
yeah.
Metroid games, excuse me, are some of the most popular games to speedrun because you can sequence break things really easily with skill. Like once you understand how like the mechanics work, like bomb jumping, for example. Like there are players who can like just bomb hop and just because they have the timing down so perfectly. There are other players like one of the craziest things. This is something that's unique to Metroid Prime is what the speedrunners do is that they use the scan visor a lot. In this game, you have different visors. You have a scan visor, you have an X-ray visor, you have a thermal sensor visor, and then you have your regular action/battle visor, right? And the scan visor, when you're scanning objects, that's where you get your tidbits of lore, of world building, and of the story. But while you're scanning it, Samus moves faster than when she's not in scan mode. So what speedrunners will do is they will scan an object. Now you move in like a semicircle arc around this object you're scanning. So they pick very hyper specific objects to scan, so that way they can essentially slingshot Samus around the level using these scannable items.
There needs to be an Easter egg where when you do that, it's got the sound of Link from Ocarina of Time going, yeah, 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 when you jump backwards.
I could totally see that. So, dude, there is actually like one of the popular things in the speedrunning community is randomizers, where
yes.
you know what I'm talking about then. So for those who don't know what a randomizer is, like the Link to the Past is one of the first popular ones. It'll take all the items in the chests and completely mix them up. So where you're used to getting, like maybe the bow and arrow in one of the dungeons, it might not be there. It might be in a random chest. It's like out in Hyrule Field or something like that.
It'll be 5 rupees.
Exactly. So it completely changes the game up where now players have to like prioritize. Okay, I know there's a lot of chests in this area, and it gives me the highest probability of getting stuff that I might need, type of thing. And there is a randomizer that crosses over Super Metroid and Link to the Past, where you switch games back and forth. I don't understand the logistics of how, like, what causes the switch. Is it like the audience on Twitch causing a switch? Is it like every time you get an item in one, you switch over to the other, or is it on a set timer? I don't really know, but yeah, it's crazy. So there is a connection in terms of speedrunning at the very least between Metroid and Zelda, but it's Super Metroid and Link to the Past. But
yeah, I see that.
I digress. So yeah, with Metroid Prime though, with its gameplay and like the controls, like I said before, are great. Work surprisingly well because they're designed around the limitations of the game. The game never throws enemies at you in unfair places for the most part. I have a couple issues with certain enemy types, which I'll go into in just a second. We are in the section for me to rant about my issues, but before I go into the negatives, I'd at least want to talk about the positives of the stuff that I liked about this. I love the variety of weapons, like the wave beam and the normal blaster, and then the plasma beam and the fucking ice beam and all that other stuff. The visors, by the way, I mentioned the visors before.
Cool.
They were an idea from Miyamoto, but when Miyamoto pitched it to the team, he pitched it cryptically, where he goes, "What would it be like if Samus had a bug's head?"
Wow, thanks, Shigeru.
And basically, they apparently left that meeting like, "What the fuck's he talking about? Like, what do you mean?" And it kind of ended up being something more along the lines of like, swapping out, how Samus sees the world.
Yeah.
And that's where the different visors came from. And the scan visor was added very late in development. And I don't know if it was Elite, I forget who it was. I was on the Did You Know Gaming YouTube video, and I forget who they credit the quote to, but it was one of the developers of the game, obviously, saying how like they were actually really against the scan visor because culturally, apparently in Japan, like just scanning things and like learning stuff about that, it was very intriguing. Like that's a game mechanic that Japanese players like, and American players wouldn't really, North American players wouldn't really like that. So they turned it into a collectible thing, which is why they kind of found this hybrid between the two, where there is a lot of information in the world, but there's also like, if you scan enough, then that adds to your completion percentage. So they kind of found this like nice balance between the two, which I thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, so Do you have any other thoughts you would like to add, Chris, before I go on my rant about my problems with the game?
Yeah, I think. Well, we touched on the music briefly. I think the music is fantastic, not only from providing a solitary vibe, but from just the actual music itself. I mean, when you go on Tallon IV for the first time and you hear that Brinstar theme kind of like remixed almost into this incredible, like, orchestral version, absolutely love. Wii controls that I love, the solitary vibe that I love. There's one thing I find fascinating about Nintendo, which is I think the Nintendo 64 was an incredible console for, realizing 3D visions of games. There is something about GameCube graphics, man. The GameCube graphics hold up so well considering that this game is like, I know there's the remaster on Switch, but even playing the version I played, it's now, 23 years old and it still holds up. I feel like the GameCube graphics hold up far better than the PlayStation 2 ever did, far better than the Xbox One ever did. And I also want to appreciate that while this came out, Halo was not far off the horizon. And Halo is a very different but very similar style game where it's the first-person shooter and it's based in space. Just the quality of Nintendo, which is something that makes me a Nintendo fanboy. Just the quality of their games it's timeless. And Metroid Prime is one of those games where that specifically stands out. There's so many things I can say that I love about this game. So many times, like when you come into the Phazon mines and you see that kind of weird, like glorious pool of Phazon, which you can't go into. Just so many things. I am somewhat shaded by the fact that I think Super Metroid does lots of these things better. But for a 3D Metroid game and for the first one, I mean, it's an incredible experience. Just the atmosphere of the game. Like, I've never played a game that has a stronger atmosphere than this. Like, you can feel the atmosphere when you're playing this, which is incredible to say for a video game.
Absolutely. And like, I think one of the visuals were something that Miyamoto specifically cited Retro Studios as being like one of their strong points. And it's very noticeable. I played this on original hardware when I was streaming it, and it still looks good. It still holds up. I think part of it is it's not necessarily because it's the GameCube versus the PS2, but it's art direction, right? The art direction is just like so strong.
Mario Sunshine still looks good. Mario Kart Double Dash still looks good. Wind Waker looks phenomenal. Well, it's incredible what they tapped into with the GameCube.
I think it's, once again, it's not necessarily the GameCube. It's not the hardware, but it's the developers, right? Like Nintendo does great art direction, straight up. Like there are some games that like don't hold up now, but like look, if we're going by the PS2 example, right? Games that still look really nice. Sly Cooper still looks really good because they went for a cell shaded, very cartoony aspect. I would even say the original Jack and Daxter still does not look awful because of the art style. The art direction for that game is very strong. The more realistic you get, the more you have to just kind of deal with the limitations of the hardware, right? Like I love Medal of Honor, but the Medal of Honor games do not look good anymore. Now they look good in a nostalgic aspect, but like straight up, they don't look good anymore. Metroid Prime, it's not even nostalgia; it just looks flat out good.
And I think as well, I'm not saying it's because they did something specific with the GameCube. I'm just saying the people who worked on GameCube games just had Nintendo specific workers on the GameCube were just able to make games that look good. I mean, Mario Sunshine looked years ahead of every other competitors against, and again, that's partly due to the art style. Same with Wind Waker. Metroid is the most, I know you were just saying about reality. Metroid is the one where it's most based in kind of a real life comparison almost. It's the most realistic of the games I've just listed. But it looks so good. I'm I'm still undecided about whether I'll buy this game on Switch. But I know they did a graphical rehaul for it. I wouldn't mind playing the original because I just remember it didn't blow me away. Like bizarrely, the Call of Duty games on the Xbox 360, I thought those looked super realistic when they came out in 2010. I thought they were incredible. Metroid, it doesn't blow you away from looking so good, but there's one moment where you just kind of you look around, you see it's. I find it specifically on the mines, the Phazon mines. You look up and you see these tall towers, and they look like tall towers. And in reality, it's incredible. I think you've nailed it. It's the art direction, and I will still say that Nintendo puts far more care into their games than most other companies do. Not saying specific companies, I'm saying the overall developer and the distributor. But there's always something about Nintendo where it's just if they're going for a certain art style, they nail it. And Metroid Prime is yet another one in their list of successes.
I would definitely agree with that, man. Like it just looks good. Like the art style is it. Even like small touches too. I think there's a lot of attention to detail in the art style. And normally, I split up the the gameplay and visuals a little bit more like linearly, but I think this is like I think we went into this really perfectly. Excellent transition, Chris. Um,
Thank you.
but I'll still go on my rant about what I have issues with the gameplay in just a moment. But the with the visuals, the attention to detail is stunning. You'll walk through a steam vent and Samus's visors will fog
Yes.
up.
Yeah.
You'll walk through under a waterfall and you'll see spritzes of water go on her visor.
Oh,
If you
an
are
explosion, and you see her eyes
yes,
reflecting off the visor. Incredible.
yes, incredible. There's even stuff I noticed this time when if you have the normal like blaster, right? The normal blaster gun or beam cannon, whatever it is.
Arm
If
cannon.
the arm cannon, if you mash the attack button, because that's the one that has the fastest attack speed, right? It's as fast as you can hit the A button.
Yep.
If you mash that button really fast, as fast as you possibly can, heat will come off of the tip of the gun. You'll see like heat rising from it because the visuals of the what you can see get slightly distorted just above the gun because it's simulating the heat that comes off of the gun after you fire it. Like it's small little touches like that where it just adds to the immersion and it ties in really expertly with making you get even more of that sense of loneliness because it's immersing you further into this world of Tallon IV is the planet you're on. And it's incredible. Like they did such a great job with the art direction in this game, and unlike the Spyro episode, I'm with you on the music on this as well. I love the soundtrack for this. For those who may not remember, my hot take for the Spyro game is that the soundtrack is overrated, but we will. we, let that be an example of our arguments. I say it's overrated. Chris says fart sound. So no, there's a whole debate on that episode. We will not rehash it here. But unlike that episode, I'm with you on this, Chris. I really like the soundtrack for this game.
Yeah, I mean, one that stands out, like obviously the first one that hooked me massively was when the first time you're on Talon 4 and it plays the Brinstar remix, which of course I love the Smash Brothers one, like the Smash Bros Melee version, which is such an like upbeat thing, and hearing it so like dark and orchestral and kind of foresty, which of course is that part of the game. But then when you get to Fendrana Drifts and you hear that first very kind of like quiet snow theme, like with the OTT piano essentially. It just frames the game so well. And I've got a musical background, but just having a game where, like, the thing I've always loved about video games, and I even wrote a university dissertation on this, it's a multi-sensory experience. And when all of those senses are being applied in the same way, you get something phenomenal. And Metroid Prime is a great example of that. You've got literally so many visual examples of what's going on. You've got, like, gameplay examples, but then the music reinforces that. It's an incredible experience when it all comes together. And Fendrana Drifts, when that happens, incredible.
And what's so interesting about the soundtrack is they strike such a good balance of melody and atmosphere where the you can hear like that like you can hear individual melodies, but the vast majority of the soundtrack is just meant to reinforce the atmosphere, right? Like it's very atmospheric, it's very chill, it's very laid back, it's very kind of lonely. Like not to keep we're definitely overusing that word, but there's no better way to describe it. Like it really reinforces every single aspect that the game is trying to like share, like the every single aspect, or sorry, it's really trying to reinforce the tone and vibe the game is trying to get across in every single aspect. Sorry, go ahead.
My best way to compare it is that one of my favorite films, which has a huge link with this game, is Alien, the horror film. And in Alien, they have a very sort of similar, like, atmospheric ambiance soundtrack. And in Alien, because you see the majority of the film on the craft, the Nostromo, or on the planet, it's a very mechanical sound. There's lots of echoes. I feel like Metroid Prime does the same, but with a much more organic feeling, where it's the same very, or like, kind of lonely, solitary feeling. I feel like it does the same thing, but does it in such a way where it makes more sense to the environment. And I love it.
No, it everything works on all cylinders. I think that's just what's so impressive about this game is that every single aspect of it, whether it is the music, the visuals, or the gameplay, and even the story, which we will get to momentarily,
Oh,
it all. Are you not a fan of the story?
not even slightly.
Oh, I liked it well enough. We'll get to all that though. But every single thing lends to this lends to the idea and their attempt at immersing you in this very lonely, alien, forgotten environment, and it all works. Like I think even the story, even though you may not be a fan of it, works really well for that. Where I have issues, I'm gonna this is gonna be my rant now, Chris.
Let's go.
Where I have issues with this, um, one thing I think is a me problem. The other thing I think is like just why. The me problem is the collecting of the Chozo relics.
Oh god, yeah. No, I agree.
I fucking hate that. I think
Was
there's
it
too
12?
many of them.
Was there 12 of them?
What?
Wasn't it 12 of them you had to collect?
There's 12 of them. You have to collect 12 of them. Now, here's the thing. It's their intention for this is not bad. Their intention is honestly really good. The intention is you have gotten every power up for the most part. Maybe some upgrades that you're missing from the different blasters, because you can upgrade each of your different beams to have a charged shot. So you might be missing some of those upgrades, but for the most part, you have a bunch of missiles, you have a bunch of bombs, you might have a handful of super bombs, and you have all your visors and you have all your beams, right? You have every single tool at your disposal now to explore this world. So they use the relics as a way to get you to go back to all the different locations that you were at once before, and in the hopes that, yeah, you're going to go there for the relic, but you also are going to get to go and explore all the different, you might, while you're traveling there, you're going to see things that you're like, oh shit, I have this power up now, I forgot about this. And then you can go and explore and poke around the edges a little bit more. I don't have an issue with that idea. I think that's actually, like, I understand their intention with that, and I think it's smart. Where my issue with it is that it's just, it takes too long to do this. You've already explored so much of the planet, and at this point you are like, you can tell like you're reaching the end of the game, and it's almost like they just tacked on an extra like 3 hours worth of content when you're ready to be done in the next hour. Like, I'm ready to go fight the final boss, but no, I have to go re-explore areas I've already been to, not because I'm curious, but because all this stuff that I passed beforehand that, like, I probably could have gotten on the way there if I would have known they existed. Yeah, I'm going to have to just deal with it, type of thing. I'm going to have to go back and get it. And I don't have like, it's a Metroid game, so like backtracking is part of the experience, and I understand that. I just thought this was a little bit too much backtracking. If they would have cut down the number of relics to like maybe 9 or something like that, I would have been much more okay with it. I would have thought that was a lot better of an idea, having like only 9 relics or something, as opposed to 12, because I just felt like it was so much. And either that, or maybe like have 1 relic per area, or maybe like like if it was a large area, have 2 or something like that. But like, I don't know. I did not enjoy that at all. Do you have any thoughts on the Chozo relic quest though?
It's been one thing I've struggled with every Metroid game I've played. Backtracking for me personally seems like it's trying to inflate the game time, and I feel like in Super Metroid, it's somewhat excusable because of the way the game is presented. In Metroid Prime, there were certain times it just seemed so OTT. It's one of my few complaints, is that there were times this is the thing I didn't like about Metroid 2. Metroid 2 felt like a chore in many things. there were quite a few times in this game where it almost felt like a chore to go back and find these certain relics in these certain places. It wasn't a part of the game I enjoyed.
I'm glad I'm not alone on that, because I was worried, like, is this just a me problem, or is it like, because once again, I do think the intention is smart and good. Like, that you have all your powers, go explore the world recreated, find the shit you couldn't find before. Like, they gave you an excuse to go and do it, and I just don't think it really worked. And I feel bad saying that, but it just, at least for me, it didn't work.
Yeah.
The other major issue that I had was the fusion Metroids, or fission, or whatever they were. Those were the Metroids that when you destroy, they break apart into two separate Metroids, and they're color coded. And depending on what color they are, determines which blaster you need to use in order to blow them up. And I wouldn't have an issue with that mechanic on a surface level if it wasn't happening so frequently in the final area. The final zone, like once you defeat Meta Ridley, which is a great boss. Actually, shout out to the bosses in this game, man. I think the bosses in this game are fantastic.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We'll touch on that in just a moment. But they are fantastic challenges. They got me really mad and pissed off, but in a good way. Like, to the point where I did want to rage quit, but at the same time, like, it was the point where I'm like, this is not the game, this is me just sucking. And that's kind of like, in a weird sense, it's a good kind of angry, at least for me. I enjoy that type of angry in a weird sense. But so anyway, you defeat Meta Ridley, and you go down into the like where the Phazon is, and like the Metroid Prime is. I forget the actual name of that the Chozo call it. You go down there though, and you have to fight your way up to get to Metroid Prime. And my issue with it is that you have to do a whole lot of platforming to get up there, which is fine. You have your double jump, you have all that stuff. But these fucking fusion Metroids spawn consistently. It's not like you only have to take out a handful and then you're done. They are constantly spawning, and they fly at you, and you can either hope that, like, the first time I did it, I tried to take them all out as I went, and they just could keep coming. I'm like, all right, so I'm just wasting my time. And since they are slow to kill, because you're killing 3 Metroids, essentially, you're killing the first form and then the 2 split forms, you're killing 3 Metroids. And by the time you kill the third, another one has respawned, and then you're rinse, washing, and repeating at that point. You're just going back at it. So then my second strategy was like, okay, let me just fucking like run through it, right? Let me just burn through the whole thing and see how fast I can get up, and maybe I don't have to fight any of them. And that works to an extent where essentially you can jump up to like this first level of platforms, then you have to take any out that are still chasing you, and then you can jump up to the second level of platforms, like where you just fucking floor it. And that's what ended up working for me. But man, did I hate it. I hated fighting the fusion Metroids. I think the design is fine. Like, I can take it or leave it. It's not my favorite. They're not my favorite enemies to fight, but I understand them testing your skills, like testing the mechanics they've taught you. And in fact, the pirates do a good job of testing you. Like, they have the color coded space pirates, so that way you know which beams to use. So when it gets to these fusion Metroids, you've already had this muscle memory built up of switching your beam types depending on the color coding. So really great job to test you on the skills that they have given you and the mechanics they've given you. But there's just too goddamn many of them. They're everywhere, and it makes progress so slow just having to get to the Metroid Prime. And they fucking come back in the final Metroid Prime fight, where in like the Metroid Prime has like 2 phases, and during the second phase, during the second phase, when there's like a period of invulnerability, the Metroid Prime will spawn enemies. Usually the first like third of its health is like other Metroids. The second third is like those like ranged Metroids that are like red or some shit like that. And then the third and final phase is the fusion Metroids, which, like I said, are fucking hard to take out because you're essentially fighting 3 of them. And then on top of that, when the fucking Metroid Prime is invisible, so and you can only damage it when you're standing on top of Phazon, and so you're having to like run to these hyper specific spots, but then you're getting attacked by the Metroids and they can't be killed in like one shot because there's fucking 3 of them, and then they suck out your health, so you have to turn into a morph ball and bomb them so they can get off, so that way you can then turn your X-ray visor back on in the hopes that you can see the fucking Metroid Prime. Like, I hate the fusion Metroids. I think they are a great idea that are implemented extremely poorly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't have such a visceral response as you do.
What are you talking about?
I find it with many things, and it might be because I've had other experiences with Metroid games. It just seemed like a difficulty leveler. Like, the better you get in the game, the more upgrades you get. Therefore, the enemies you face are going to be more difficult. And I enjoyed in Super Metroid, you would often have ones at different, like, different perspectives. This was like the first person perspective. I didn't mind it as much.
No, I don't have an issue with the mechanic itself. I have an issue with how often they were using it.
That's an indication of how well you're doing, though, and how much harder the game is getting. I'm fully on board with it.
Well, so the thing is, so like, I think for the final boss, it's fine enough where they escalate the final boss where the fusion metroids whatever are the last enemies that boss spawns. I'm more okay with that because it's an escalation of the boss fight. When you're leading up to the boss fight, though, in that cavern leading up to the Metroid Prime, if they put a finite amount of the fusion Metroids in there, in that giant room, I would be okay with it. If they put 5 or 4 or some shit like that, I'm fine with that. Even if you want to load them up, or I have to like find a way to like kite them all at the same time or some shit like that, that's fine. But the fact that they are asking you to traverse and like platform and traverse across this area that you're not used to yet, that's new to you, while enemies that are extremely hard to kill and will continue to respawn. It's not like you can just take them out and then move on, or find some other way to like take them out and just that's it. You have to find a weird way to balance the two, and it's not really intuitive, and it's never really done well, in my opinion. I think the reason I have an issue with the fusion Metroids is not because of the mechanics, it's how they implement it. And I think that it's okay in the final boss, it's a good escalation, but that cavern specifically, man, it was just like, I'm trying to take enemies out, and then every time you were trying to climb up, then you get up to the top. And there was one time a Metroid, I was mid jump and it bowled into me and pushed me off the ledge. So then I would have to go down to the bottom, fight it, climb back up, and by that time 3 had already respawned. And I'm like, I'm back. Like, it just, you don't need to make them respawn. Give me a finite amount, make me fight a handful of them, but don't make it continue to happen. It does not work. And if you want to give me like items that are going to like how like in like the original Metroid and like Super Metroid, there'll be like areas where there's a continuous stream of enemies, so that way you can farm like energy or something like that. Like, give me something like that along those lines, but in some other way. Like, I almost wonder if they thought like this would like kill 2 birds with 1 stone, where you get all these fusion Metroids, which give you a lot of enemies, which could give you lots of missile recoveries, or like more missiles or more energy, but there's a save point in the room previously, and there's a missile like replenish thing at the top, so they don't even need it for that either. So I don't know. The fusion Metroids, I think, was a great idea that they used really poorly, if that makes sense.
I wonder as well if that's part of if that's how gaming was just back in that era, because I remember Tomb Raider 3 specifically, which was 1999, I want to recall. A very similar issue where you had like the constantly respawning enemies. It was a wasp in the final 2 levels, and it was irritating. But it was meant to also clarify that you're in the end game at this point. I wonder if it's just that's just where gaming was at this part of life, where not to artificially extend the game per se, but kind of throwing everything at you. I wonder if Metroid is still suffering from that, because we're right on the cusp of like I still consider video gaming took a step when Modern Warfare for Call of Duty came out, where it became a very different style of video gaming. I wonder if Metroid Prime is old enough that it still had enough of the retro game style where sometimes things were just like brutally unfair. And it hadn't broken free of that, despite the fact the actual presentation of the game had broken free of that style of gameplay.
It's possible. I still think it's like, in a weird sense, I don't want it changed per se. I think part of it is like that makes the game what it is. That's part of what makes the game magical, is the thing are its flaws, right? Like in a weird sense, I don't want games to ever be perfect, because otherwise then I would A, have nothing to rant about, but B, it also is just like, it makes it interesting, right? Like there's a friend of the show, Dave Jackson. He's got a great podcast called Tales from the Backlog, and one of the things he talks about on it, there's a conversation about should games always be fun? And on a surface level, you'd be like, yeah, like, what are you talking about? That's a stupid question. What do you mean, should games be fun? But not necessarily. You need moments of juxtaposition of unfun moments, so that way when the stuff that you do really enjoy hits, it hits that much harder, right?
Yeah.
So in a weird sense, I don't think games would be as good without their flaws.
Yeah.
I think in a weird sense, like, if I didn't have to do all that bullshit with the fusion Metroids and the backtracking for the Chozo quest, I don't know if this game would have as much of an impact on me, because now I don't have any strong emotions, whether it's good or bad, but like, I don't have any strong emotions for it,
Hmm.
And I don't think necessarily. I think there are examples of games that I consider like there's very few parts that I actually dislike. Like, we were talking a little bit off mic about this one game, Astrobot. Like,
Yeah.
um, you know, Astrobot, there's very few parts of the game I dislike. I enjoy, I would say, almost every single part of it. There's minor nitpicks I could go with here and there, but nothing that ever made me mad to the point of the Chozo uh, relic quest or the fusion Metroids at the end of the game, right? Nothing anywhere near close. Like, that game, I would consider it was enjoyable the whole way through. So it's not to say that games have to be like, have to have flaws that make you mad type of thing, but I do think that, like, the games that have flaws, it makes it that much more interesting. And there's always going to be people who like the things that you don't like. Maybe I'm sure there's people out there who like the Chozo Relic quest for maybe even for the exact reasons that I said that it worked, where it's it's an excuse to backtrack through this entire game and this entire world that you explored. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But at least to sum up my feelings on it, at least for me, it's just the fusion Metroids aren't those two things, that the Chozo Relic quest and the fusion Metroids aren't inherently bad things. They're just things that I think they didn't implement well.
Yeah.
And
That's fair.
The fusion Metroids specifically are a little bit more egregious to me, because if you're just trying to get me to the boss and you want to show me these enemies, that's fine. Introduce a new enemy to be late in the game. That's a-okay if it's done well. And it's done well in the sense that it's a very natural escalation of the Metroid enemy, because now they're in the phase on, like, the story reasons as to why they've mutated and why they're appearing here makes sense.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's great. But if you're trying to get me to do platforming up the whole thing, and you have infinitely spawning enemies that you can't fucking see easily because you're in a first person mode, and it's not like you can do the platforming in third person when you're in the morph ball form, that's just bad. Like, that's not good to me. Like, that's putting me at a disadvantage in a way that, like, I don't have the tools to come out of easily, with the exception of stopping on a platform and looking for where the enemy's at every single jump, and hope that they're not currently charging me when I do that, because it takes a while to turn around. So I think that's my issue with it. It's honestly just that room.
Yeah. I completely understand. And actually, question, Josh, can I do my rant?
Well, go for it.
So I think Metroid Prime is a fantastic game, a really enjoyable game. However, Super Metroid does literally everything better.
I mean, I don't think that's a hot take. Super Metroid is still considered the best Metroid game in the whole series.
It is the thing for me, and this is something I did some research for this because again, it's been a while since I played Metroid Prime. It's been probably about a decade or so since I last played Metroid Prime, which again, this podcast will make me decide if I buy it again. Super Metroid and Metroid Prime, I consider are very similar to Star Wing and Lilac Wars, which is the European name for Star Fox and Star Fox N64. I think it's the same story, just recreated. Because let's look at like Metroid. Let's look at both of them. They start off on a space station with a countdown and an explosion.
Mhm.
Then you end on a rainy planet, which is a forest. Then the next level is the lava. Then the next level is the snow. It's the entirely same thing, except Super Metroid has such a better story. Metroid Prime doesn't really have an engaging story whatsoever. Granted, you can get a lot of the history from the Chozo ruins, and you get lots of backstory and lots of things to understand, but all of that's optional. However, in Super Metroid, you have such an intrinsic bind to the story because the Metroid you found in Metroid 1 has, latched onto you. It's like imprinted itself as like your mother. And then that gets taken away by Ridley. Even in Metroid Prime, it's not Ridley, it's Meta Ridley. It's like a metal
Well, it's
recreation
because you
of it.
destroyed Ridley in in Super Metroid, so this is Ridley being put back together by the space pirates as like a robot.
Exactly, but it sounds like such a weak a weak reason. He's like, oh, it's the same villain, I promise. It's just meta now. But in Super Metroid, you have more abilities. You have a different art style, which I feel like is more lonely. You have a more active soundtrack, and the ending of Super Metroid is so much better. I mean, the ending of Metroid Prime is you defeat the bad Metroid Prime. You lose your suit. You go on your spaceship, and you blast away onto the next adventure. In Super Metroid, you have this entire thing. Like, you've realized that the young Metroid is latched onto you. It's the last Metroid in the world at this point, as we're led to believe, and that gets killed by Mother Brain. And then you have that entire thing to focus on. It's so much more. There's so much more conflict. There's so much more, gravity, for want of a better phrase. There's so much more gravity behind the story in Super Metroid. And that entire intro sequence where this evil, like, life-sucking being, you've got one chance where you can make it work and it gets stolen away from you, as opposed to, oh, we found a distress signal and now there's space pirates.
I guess for me, the reason why it doesn't bother me as much is like, I think Super Metroid has you're right to I agree with you to an extent. Super Metroid has a more emotional story, like the specifically the relationship between Samus and the
And
baby
also,
Metroid and how it
and
comes
also
back. Like it
can the comparison be made to Alien, the film franchise, yet again, where there's a single woman who has been adopting essentially a
I
child
mean,
figure?
it's literally almost 1-to-1. Like it's literally almost 1-to-1. And the fact that wasn't Alien 3, that's the plot of Alien 3, and this is Metroid, like Super Metroid's the third Metroid game.
It's more similar to Alien 2, Aliens. Alien 3 is a prison planet, and I guess that she is impregnated by
It's
the
a prison
alien.
planet. The planet Zebes Zebes or whatever it is a prison planet from
Mhm.
it's the pirates like base.
Yeah, and that's actually makes more sense because Ridley? What's her
Yes,
name?
Ridley.
Yeah, Ridley. Oh my god, so many things are making so much more
Yeah,
sense right now.
it's Ripley, I believe, is
Yeah,
the
it's Ripley in Alien and Ridley in Metroid.
in Metroid.
But of
Yeah,
course, Ripley in Alien is an unwilling mother of the alien, essentially, in that film. However,
just like
Ridley,
Samus is an unwilling mother of the Metroid in this.
but she becomes more willing, and that's what's much more personal. And of course, Mother Brain making a return is much more impactful for the franchise. In Metroid Prime, the series just seemed like, oh no, this thing is happening. Go from A to B. You've got all this backstory about the Chozo, which is very, very significant. However, like the story itself, there's nothing significant there at all.
So I think I think you could make that leverage that criticism at Prime where the story's non-existent unless you do the scanning stuff.
Hmm.
If you do the scanning stuff, there's a really great story. And it's funny that I'm the one enjoying this because I am almost always the one railing against Dark Souls style storytelling where
Oh,
like you
it's
only
so
get the
Dark
story.
Souls. It's so Dark Souls.
Yeah, where you only get the story through fucking like item descriptions. In this though, like I don't know, the scanning felt more intuitive to me than like Dark Souls does in terms of how it gets the story. But like I don't know. Because the story of not Super Metroid, sorry, Metroid Prime is that you receive a distress call or distress whatever the fuck, and you go to investigate, and then the thing blows up. Of course, so then you have to escape in a allotted amount of time. The explosion damages your suit, which causes you to lose all your powers, which we've totally forgot to talk about. You start the game off with most of Samus's powers, and you lose all of them.
Oh, what other game do you do that in?
It's Metroid.
Super Metroid. Yep.
Well, no, Super Metroid. You don't have any. You only have your blaster power at the beginning. You don't have any powers in the beginning other than your normal stuff.
I think you got the morph ball. I feel like you got the morph ball at the beginning.
No,
of Super Metroid.
I legitimately, I was showing my daughter Super Metroid tonight before we recorded, and you don't have the morph ball.
Oh, my apologies. And audience,
No, it's
wrong.
Yeah, it's crazy. But so that's neither here nor there. I don't think it's that much of a big deal either way. But you land on Tallon IV and you start exploring, and Samus has never been here before. And by reading the journal entries, you find out about this Chozo race that exists in this bizarre world of like they exist almost in and out of time. Like they can almost like look back, like look at the world almost like a god almost, but they're not gods. It's really interesting. And this meteorite crashes into Talon and brings Phazon with it, and it starts corrupting the world around them, and it causes mutations in the wildlife and in them as well. Like they talk a lot of the writing in it is honestly really fucking good. Like take the story elements out of it, whether you like it or not. The writing, the actual like dialogue, the entries, the diary entries are fantastic. The writing in it is really strong, and it really adds like a sense of mystery and wonder to the world around you. And you kind of start, it honestly reminds me a little bit of Outer Wilds in the sense where Outer Wilds, like imagine the exploration of Metroid Prime and the storytelling of Metroid Prime where you kind of are reading data entries, but that's the entire game. Like there's no combat.
Dude, you would love
it,
Metroid 3. I strongly suggest playing Metro Prime 3 Corruption. You'd have such a good time.
I'll give it. I'm not. So here's the thing. I'm not normally a fan of that style game. Outer Wilds somehow, for some reason, like really, really worked for me. Shout out to my buddy Rick over at Pixel Project Radio. We did a 3-part episode series on Outer Wilds, and it's one of my favorite things I've ever had the privilege of collaborating on. So please consider checking that out. And Rick is also a fantastic podcaster. You should just check out Pixel Project Radio in general. But with Metroid Prime, like you kind of learn about what happened to the Chozo race through these data entries, these scanned items, and these scan points, and you learn how the Phazon started corrupting them, and they started losing their sanity slowly, and they're trying to find a way to contain this insanity, but they just can't seem to do it. And they kind of have they're just hoping they talk about knowing that there's going to be a savior, and they reference Samus specifically. Like that part I think is a little bit too on the nose. Like I think it's weird that like Samus is somehow related to the Chozo. If Samus would have been not have had anything to do with the Chozo, and you just look through this world and this remnants of the Chozo race and seeing what happened and how the space pirates even interfere with it and whatnot, I think would have been really cool and interesting. The Samus's connection to the Chozo is fine. I have not played Prime 2 or 3, so I don't know how they expand on that storyline, but I like it. I think the story itself just really works because of those entries. But I can understand your point, Chris, where like you should be able to tell the story without that, and I'm normally in agreement with that, where like I don't want to have to read diary entries to understand the story. I think the diary entries should be purely supplemental to add immersion and add world building, not be the primary way to tell the story. For some reason in this, it just kind of worked because you have to scan so many things anyway, and scanning just felt like a more important part of the game. I think the reason I don't like it for like Dark Souls and shit like that is where like reading item descriptions and having to glean history of the world through item descriptions just feels a lot more like there's too many layers that you have to dig through just to get to like world building. Versus this, it's just like, no, here it is. Just read it. It's right there for you to read. And I don't know. I liked it. I think the story is honestly really good. I don't think it's told well per se. I think it's written well in the specific diary entries, but like from like a macro perspective, like kind of zooming out a whole bunch, it's not told nearly as well as Super Metroid. So I can kind of see your critiques of it. I don't entirely agree with it, but at the same time I don't think you're wrong either, if that makes sense.
I think the issue is also the story that's being told through the entries that you scan. It's not really particularly relevant apart from the phase-on stuff and, of course, the overall Metroid Prime itself. Lots of it isn't necessarily relevant. It's a great story. It reminds me a lot of Fallout when you come across those diary entries and stuff like that. It's a well-written story. I would have loved the game based specifically on the stories that you read in this game through the scans, as opposed to hearing about it as, background knowledge per se. And the fact it's also completely, it's optional to even read these in the first place. I think there needs to be like a Metroid Prime where you play as a Chozo and you go through this entire experience where you're experiencing people getting, corrupted by Phazon. And again, I will plead that if you like this story, Metroid Prime 3 you're going to love.
I think though, like, I don't know, I think everything ties in really well because Phazon is like the primary driving force of this story, right? Like, it's how Samus gets more powers. It's what kills the Chozo. It's what brings the pirates to this whole area that Samus has to investigate. Like, Phazon is like the primary story. It is the inciting incident
But
for multiple points of the story.
You'd understand that about Phazon regardless of if you read the stories in the first place. If you came across it as you do in the game and went forward with it, you'd have the same level of understanding.
Then I guess I'm confused with what the critique of the story is. If it's obvious even without the journal entries. I guess okay. Actually, you know what? That's fair. Phazon by itself would not be interesting without the context of how it affected the Chozo. Yeah. So I could understand that.
My critique of the story is that it's a very go to A, go to B, go to C story, which comes off the back. I know there was an 8-year hiatus between Super Metroid and Metroid Prime. There was a much more emotional impact and a much more. There's greater reason to continue with the game in Super Metroid. In Metroid Prime, there is a great backstory behind there, but if you actually just look at the overall way the game is presented, it's a very basic game.
I still think I disagree with you on that. I think because if you take a
I don't know these conversations with you, buddy. These are my favorite bits.
Oh, I do too. I like these type. Like, what's the point of discussing art if you're not going to have disagreements? Like I love it.
You start off on the the tutorial level is the is it Orpheus? Is that what it's called?
Whatever that spaceship is, that space station is.
You go to Orpheus. There's no real reason for you to end up at Tallon IV. Like, it's not really explained.
Well, you crash on it.
What?
You crash on it. The explosion causes like.
Oh, you're absolutely right. My apologies. Yes, you crash
on it. And like, I mean, you could make the same argument for Super Metroid. Like, I was playing it this morning. Samus responds to a distress signal. You go to it. You find the baby Metroid that she just dropped off there. Like, the stuff is broken out, and Ridley takes it. And then Samus flies away. But then the next thing you see is you just land on a planet. Like, the game doesn't tell you why you're there. I think you would have to read the manual. Maybe it tells you that Ridley took the baby Metroid there.
The assumption there is that, first of all, you've got the distress signal all of these scientists are dead. Somebody has taken the most powerful life form in the world.
No,
Of
that
course, you're
part makes
chasing after
sense.
them. You're immediately chasing after them. That makes much more like you're chasing after you're chasing after Ridley, who took the Metroid itself. So that makes more
Okay,
sense as
that's
like
fair. That's fair.
yeah, that makes more sense as like a driving force of the narrative per se. In Metroid, you're absolutely right. I will fully admit I forgot that the Metroid that your craft crash landed. But then again, it
Well,
should be trying to find a way to leave the planet as opposed to finding your way down into the caverns, into the drifts, into the ruins. Like
that I will give I will, and that's where I was going to say I will concede a point on that to you as well, where it's like you crash land on this. What's your impetus for staying?
mhm.
You know, like other than like the fact that you did see Meta Ridley, and but like you don't know Meta Ridley's there. You crashed there, like you don't know where anyone's at.
I think
Um,
it's raining on Tallon IV. He'll get rusty.
let me, you know what? Let me see what does the Wikipedia page for Metroid Prime explain it, because sometimes like the plot section of that's written in there sometimes makes a little bit more sense. So let's see what Wikipedia says about the story for Prime, just to see if it has like a more succinct thing. Maybe because maybe we're missing something, right? So
Mhm.
the space pirate frigate is the Orpheon, just like you said, and while you're escaping because you defeat the Parasite Queen, and the Parasite Queen falls into the ship's reactor, which causes the destruction of the ship. While you're escaping from the frigate, Samus encounters, the cybernetic version of Ridley called Meta Ridley, and during the escape, an explosion damages Samus's suit, causing some of her abilities to malfunction. Samus escapes the frigate and chases Ridley in her gunship towards the nearby planet of Tallon IV. So it's literally the same exact story reason. Like Ridley comes around and she just chases her. Samus chases Ridley to the nearest planet,
But
right?
what reason does she have to chase Ridley?
Because Ridley was there. When Samus is trying to escape it, she sees Ridley, and Ridley is her, arch enemy, right? Like she thought she destroyed Ridley in the events of Super Metroid, and sees Ridley is still alive.
I mean, that's true, but Mother Brain was the main reason, like, was the main thing to take out. Granted, Meta Ridley's not great
Yeah,
hunting
but
around in
like
the world.
if you see a villain that you took, like in any movie you see or TV show, right? When a main character sees someone they thought was dead and they're back again, they go investigating,
But
right? So
she's a bounty hunter. I mean, later in the game series, she's actually employed by God knows whatever whatever letter combination it is. Like, granted, yes, that's a bad guy she wants dead, but she's a bounty hunter. She has other there's just too many questions about it.
I disagree. I would think if just any normal person they'd be like, I thought I killed you. And
But
then you would go,
it doesn't have the emotional impact of Ridley taking away the last surviving Metroid.
it
It
definitely
seems
doesn't.
very paper thin.
It definitely doesn't, but it is. I don't think it's paper thin, but it's definitely not as emotionally impactful for sure.
I don't know.
I don't know,
Again,
man. Like
for the audience out
in
there, I
any
love these
movie when,
conversations. I love these conversations with Josh. These are my favorite bits.
but like in any movie, right? Like you would, if you were watching a movie series and the villain you thought was dead from a previous one is suddenly back, you'd be like, oh, what the fuck? They're still alive? What? Like that's a huge like story. That's a huge story beat. Like that's a huge point of interest to get people to come back to that movie, to that TV series, whatever it may, book series, whatever it may be. With that said, I did not know. It's the same issue I guess I had with Super Metroid, in that I had no idea that Samus was chasing Ridley, or Samus was chasing uh, Ridley. Which in Super Metroid, I blame myself more for that, because you clearly see Ridley take the baby Metroid and fly away. So of course Samus is going to go after Ridley, excuse me. So that I blame my naivety and my kind of like ignorance on that one. With this one, I don't think it's very clear at all, because like once again, it you don't see a shot of her chasing Ridley, you just see her sailing off in the ship. If there was just an establishing shot of like Ridley off in the distance and Samus's ship like far behind or something and they're going in the same direction, that would have been enough.
You know,
But
all it
yeah.
needed was one diary entry saying that there is a Prime version of Metroid on Tallon IV. That would have saved everything. That would have made so much more sense.
And then everyone's like, "Oh, he said it. He said it."
Oh, Metroid Prime. No, that if she was on the ship and there was some hint that there was a like Metroid Prime was a thing, that that explains everything. Like obviously Samus has this big, background with this sort of stuff. The fact there is the essentially the mother load, quote unquote mother brain of it all. If they had initiated that from the beginning, as opposed to it being the Parasite Queen and then a robot version of somebody she doesn't like very much, it would have made much more. It would have defined the impetus of the story.
I still think chasing after Ridley is a strong enough impetus for going to Tallon IV.
She's a
once
bounty hunter. She chases after anyone who will give her money for her killing.
But she also it's a bounty that she thought she killed before.
Yeah, but no one's telling. Like that thing as a bounty hunter, she's being told to kill specific people. No one told her to kill Robot Ridley.
I still don't. I disagree though. Like just because she's a bounty hunter, like she's still a human underneath that, right? And a human where you thought your villain, you killed your arch enemy, like one of your arch enemies, and you see your arch enemy still alive.
Well, I think
in
it's
weird
not
form.
Her arch enemy. It's a robot version of her arch enemy. It's not got thoughts, emotions, or feelings, which Ridley did initially. It's like saying, "Oh, okay, Josh has a big gripe against the I don't know, the Trader Joe's cashier because they gave him the wrong amount of money." There's now a robot version of that same cashier. There's no actual like motivation or like empathy behind that individual. Like Meta Ridley, yes, it's an excuse to get Ridley back in the franchise again, which I know it needs. However, if you're willing to bring back Ridley as a metal robot, then why isn't Mother Brain back in this franchise?
They were actually considering bringing Mother Brain back for this, but it was scrapped.
But
I guess like
exactly
there was
they?
Well, no, I'm just giving a fun fact. I'm not giving an excuse. I'm not making an argument for it. I'm just giving a fun fact. That I will say the Metroid Prime is not as interesting of a villain as Mother Brain is, but I don't know. I don't think I will. I think we'll just have to agree to disagree on it. Like I think the impetus for Samus chasing Ridley, like I don't think it's told well. I'll definitely give it that. Like I had no idea why she was on Tallon 4, so that's a detriment to the game, right? But once I read it here, I'm like, okay, I could see why she chases after. Like one of the lead space pirates that she thought she killed is back, and all of a sudden it's a cybernetic or whatever the fuck. Like I don't know. To me, I don't care if you're a bounty hunter or otherwise, like your interest would be piqued. And if she's already like, she was just on the space pirate frigate Orphean and saw all the slaughtered space pirates and then saw Ridley flying off. Like, I don't know. I think she'd be curious about like, well, maybe Ridley knows more about like what the fuck happened here type of thing. Like what is this phazon thing that she sees on the pirate ship that causes all the mutations and stuff like that. I think it's enough of an impetus, but I don't know why I'm dying on the hill here because I agree with you that Super Metroid is better. I think Super Metroid is a more interesting story. I also will say that this game suffers a lot of what Ocarina of Time did, where they just kind of took what worked in the previous entry in the series and they just turned it into 3D, right? Ocarina of Time is it's very similar to Link to the Past, right? You have three dungeons to start off, and then the world suddenly changes into like an upside down version of itself, and then you have 5 more dungeons after that, right?
It's like I mentioned earlier, it's the same as Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, and again Star Fox and then Star Fox 64. I will say, just going back to our previous argument, if you can call it an argument, because of course this is there's no bad.
I would say it was a healthy debate.
I think it's testament to this game that we care so much about this sort of thing because the game is so good. Like, I know I've just talked very negatively about Metroid Prime for a little bit. It's because this game is so phenomenal. And this is a specifically gamer thing. When there's a game you enjoy so much, like when there's something that's not quite right and the rest of the game is so good, you can't help but dwell on it. The reason I dwell on this so much is because Metroid Prime is such a phenomenal game. So therefore, anything that I don't feel like is up to the standard of the rest of the game, it kind of sticks out to me. So don't please for the audience, don't please interpret any of my words as me disliking the game per se. I'm literally focusing on one minute, almost insignificant point of the game to rant about.
Oh, I will double down. This game fucking sucked. No, I no, if you're going to rant about a minute part of the story, I get. I can't be mad at you. I ranted about a minute part of the game. I ranted for 10 minutes, Chris, about one fucking room because of the fusion Metroids, right? Like,
Well,
you're
that's
not.
the thing as well. From my point of view, Metroid, I rank so highly. Again, Super Metroid is by far my favorite Metroid game. I think Metroid Prime is so good that I feel like the story should complement the rest of the game, which is why it stands out to me. I'm upset that I feel like one particular part of the story doesn't match the quality of the rest of the game.
That's fair. That is a fair opinion to have. It is a fair opinion to hold for sure. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't bother me, but just like, the fusion Metroids bothered me, but they weren't that big of a deal for you, right? So
No.
like,
Well, the thing as well, I also feel like there's quite big comparisons to be made between Metroid and Resident Evil, which is where you get to you do all the surface level stuff, and then there's a laboratory underground, and all the things there are ridiculously unfair. Because I grew up on Resident Evil style games, this didn't seem unwelcome or different to me. This seemed like, oh, this is a regular trait of horror style games. And I would consider Metroid not necessarily being a horror game, but horror-esque.
oh, absolutely. I mean, it's got horror themes to it. When I
Oh, God, yeah.
booted up Super Metroid for my daughter this afternoon, like just the music and like the way the camera panned across different things, like it was very creepy, and it still has like a really good creepy vibe, even on the Super Nintendo, right? And I think to kind of like even emphasize more your point with this, like all the comparisons we're drawing with this, didn't you say you played Super Metroid for the first time just like a few years ago?
Yeah, 2021.
So all of this love you have for it is not nostalgia. And I think that's a very important thing to note too, where like same thing for me with Metroid Prime. Like I don't have nostalgia for this. So all the the love and criticism we have for this, none of it's coming from a sense of nostalgia, which I think, not saying it makes our opinion more valid or anything like that, because I think nostalgia is a very valid part of that shapes people's opinions, but I do think it unclouds a little bit of it, right? There's no rose colored glasses that are obfuscating some of the more not problematic. Let's choose a different word, that are obfuscating some of the tougher parts of the game. Maybe some of the more like some of the issues that people may see with it. So I don't know.
Well,
I've kind of lost the thread of where we're at right now.
The previous times I've been on your podcast, I've talked about video games that have been incredibly important to me as an individual. Mario Galaxy, which I still think is the greatest video game of all time. Oh, goodness me, that is clouded by nostalgia. Same with Tomorrow Never Dies on the PS1. It's incredible to play a game like Super Metroid, which is, it was 16 or 30? I think 32-bit, and to play that game
technically, Super Metroid, it would have been 16-bit. Metroid Prime would have been like 128-bit, okay, technically.
But no, to play a 16-bit game and have an emotional response to just the intro alone as opposed to the rest of the game, I mean, that goes to the quality of what we're playing. And I agree with what you're saying. This is not a nostalgia-based episode. This is just what we're playing as humans, as adults at this stage. And Metroid, I played as a almost 30-year-old, essentially, and had a phenomenal time with it because it was a good game. We're talking about the same thing about Metroid Prime. When I played this, yes, I was 15 years old, but it wasn't necessarily a game where I'd be playing it from nostalgia-based, perspectives alone. It was just I had the opportunity to play this game and we went there for it. I will say we can actively look back on it and say, from people who have played video games for most of our lives, we have a better way to judge it and value it, which is why when we come to criticize it, it's actually almost a compliment in a way, because we have, this game came out in 2002. I'm criticizing something 23 years later. Could you imagine?
Take that, Metroid Prime, you
Exactly.
son of a bitch.
Could you imagine playing this in 2002? My mind would have been completely blown. Granted, I would have been 9 years old, and many things would have blown my mind. But playing this as, like, let's say we were transported back to 2002 at the ages we currently are. Could you imagine playing this game and how amazing it would have been?
No, I can't. Like, I mean, I played it when it was somewhat contemporary in like 2006, I want to say, is when I first experienced it. So, but at the same time, I think I didn't have, in a weird sense, I was so disconnected from like what was impressive at the time. Like when Tristan showed me, like a lot of the stuff I was talking about with the attention to detail earlier, my buddy Tristan is the one that like pointed that out to me first, like the water on the visor and the Samus's eyes and the reflection of her visor and stuff like that. Um, that was stuff that Tristan pointed out to me, and I remember when he told me that I was like, "Oh, that's cool," but it didn't register with me how actually amazing that was. Tristan was always very observant with that type of stuff. Like he's always been a little bit more of like picky with his graphic stuff, and which I give him shit for. But if you think about it, like especially back when this was contemporary, back in 2002 or 3 or whatnot, like that, like he noticed that shit even as like a 14 or 15-year-old, which is not something I think most 14 or 15-year-olds would really notice, right? At least I can't say for me. Like I feel like I've only like grown in my appreciation, excuse me, of games as I've gotten older. And when I was younger, I don't think I had enough to compare it to really. I didn't understand the full context
Oh
of it,
god,
if
yeah.
that makes sense.
You make a very good point. In the comparison of video games that were available at the time, my greatest comparison would probably be Tomb Raider for a solitary video game experience where it's all about exploration as opposed to, gunfight. This
Mm,
is this is like oceans above Tomb Raider.
yeah. It's incredible. Well, you know what? I think we can use this as a way because we're already kind of just talking about it in kind of like overarching thoughts. So I think that's how we can wrap up this episode, Chris. Let's go over our final thoughts on this game. Let's wrap up this episode with some final thoughts. I will go first, and I want to give you, my guest, the final say. This game fucking rules, man. It's still great. Like as much as Chris and I were going back and forth, and I know there's a big digression with Super Metroid, which I have not covered on the show yet. So
Oh,
there's
when
going to
you
be a
do,
lot.
I am there. When you cover Super Metroid, I am so there.
Good to know. Good to know. That I'll put you down for it. So there will be a full
Hell,
discussion on
I'll
Super
start a
Metroid.
podcast on Super Metroid just so you can be on my show for once.
Do it. I want to guest on more shows. Um, but no, this game is great. It while it has some issues, whether you don't like the story, which you're not alone in that critique, Chris. I know a lot of people do not like the story of this game or they're not a fan of it. I enjoyed it a decent amount. Or if maybe you're not a fan of the controls or whatnot, but like I think there's something here that's worth at least looking at, even if you end up disliking it because of its age and how it's, like the controls may not feel as intuitive. I think this game is phenomenal. I think this is such a really good interpretation of the Metroid formula in 3D. And something I didn't bring up when I was talking about some of the development history facts, the morph ball was a real big sticking point for the developers because you can't really do the morph ball in first person, right? It wouldn't work
Yeah.
well. You need to be able to see the morph ball, and I think they did an excellent job incorporating it into the game by using the morph ball as a lot of puzzles and that type of stuff. And one of the things that was a sticking point was that they could not figure out a smooth way to go from first person into the morph ball third person, and they were getting very frustrated and they were considering dropping it entirely from the game. But Miyamoto was like, no, it's not a Metroid game without the morph ball. And I would have to agree with that. It is not a Metroid game without the morph ball. So anyway, that's the last fun fact I have. This game's great. I enjoyed pretty much every minute of it, with the exception of those things I mentioned prior. And I burned through this in like a week. I streamed it every night from starting Sunday night until Saturday the next week. It was 6 days. I never do that. I was lucky enough that I was able to get ahead on editing podcasts, so I could do that. Normally, I'm not able to do that. So the fact that I set aside a full week for streaming and did it is a testament to this game. So I love this game. So Chris, I'm throwing it over to you. Your final thoughts for the final say on Metroid Prime.
One thing, I've been very critical of this game in certain ways, especially when it comes to the story. That part of that is because of my my affection for Super Metroid, which I think is a beautifully crafted game, and also because my expectation of this game is so damn high, because it is such a good game. Like, honestly, it is incredible. Like, playing through this, and I've said this before previously in the podcast. There's so many things Nintendo had to do right on the transition from 2D to 3D, and Nintendo was the master of 2D, gaming. Like Mario to 3D with Mario 64, nailed it. Legend of Zelda from Link Through Time. Josh, help me.
Link to the Past.
Link to the Past, thank you. Link to the Past into Ocarina of Time, absolutely nailed it. Star Wing, which was essentially a 3D game, but then into Lilac Wars, I'm using European names here, similar sort of thing. I love that they waited for the GameCube to make Metroid a 3D game, because they absolutely killed it. And the fact they had the foresight to make it a first-person game as opposed to a 3D game, a third-person game, was incredible. And there's so much about this I love. Like, granted, Super Metroid I still think is the better game, but Metroid Prime, oh my god. You have got such a good time waiting for yourself if you log into this and play it. I played the Wii version, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Josh, I will be investing in Metroid Prime for the Nintendo Switch. You have convinced me throughout this podcast that that's something I have to do. But just a game where it's clearly a one-player game, and just how solitary it is. There's something about the silence in so many parts of this. Like, there's so many times in this game, and I remember this when I played through it back in 2009, where you were trying to find like an audio cue, and you'd have to get rid of all the enemies, and then you could finally hone in on it. You had to make yourself alone to play this game. And this is something about video games that I'm really upset about in my current era, is that we're going further and further away from the single-player game narrative.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that this game you can play now on current-gen systems if you're a Nintendo, and you can just realize quite how good video games can be, this is worth your time. Yes, I have been on the devil side of the shoulder. Don't get me wrong. This is a 97% game. This is incredible. I love this game more than I can possibly imagine. And my God, if you're listening to this and you're listening to me, play this game.
I don't think I could have said it any better. And that would be another conversation, like the shift away from single player experiences, which I think we're going to shift back to in a couple of years, but we'll that's a discussion for another episode. Trying to contain the tangents, but it's hard for me. But yeah, that will do it for this episode, y'all. I appreciate every one of you listening. Chris, man, thank you once again for joining me. Always a pleasure having you on the show. I always love our conversation, and I love our spirited debates. And I mean that not even like passive aggressively. Like, every time we get into a debate, I always leave it being like, man, it really got me thinking, and I love it. So I always love having you on the show. If you are to be found online, my friend, where can the good people find you online? And is there anything you'd like to promote?
Well, I'll just say, Josh, as well, something I love, as I've been on quite a few podcasts and talking to people, I really appreciate how you can, listen to different opinions and actually, discuss them. So full credit to you. We had a minor disagreement about something, and if anything, it's now something I want to play the game again, so I can look at it and talk to you about it later. I'm
and be like, I was fucking right. You're stupid. I knew it the whole time. Super Metroid rules. Metroid Prime drools. That's gonna be that. That's definitely you. I'm gonna get a voice memo on like fucking Instagram.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Well, the thing is as well, like, oh Jesus Christ, dude. No, thank you very much for all of your audience for listening to me. I am British Bond Addict on Instagram. I'm a primarily a James Bond focused account. If anything, I would actually say go and follow Capital Royale on Instagram, CAPITOL Royale, for James Bond, focused events. If you want to see a guy who talks endlessly about ties and motor racing, then I guess you can follow me. But, you're the waste of your own time.
And that is capital Roy. It's capital CAPITOL, like Chris spelled, _ Royale _ 007 on Instagram. And it's for Washington, D.C. area Bond fans. So, and you can go up and down the East Coast as well. But yeah, so go check out Chris over on Instagram and go check out Capital Royale for if you're Bond fans, you want to get involved with some more Bond events. As for myself, you can follow me on Blue Sky at stillloadingpodcast.com over there, at stillloadingpod on Instagram and Facebook and Twitch, where I stream whenever the hell I'm able to. Like I mentioned before, I did stream the entire playthrough of this game. So you can check out whatever the heck else I'm playing and whatever I feel like streaming over there. Usually stream Saturday nights around 8 p.m. Eastern, but depends. It depends on if I have other stuff going on, if I have other recording sessions, or if I have other things to play or other things happening. But so generally you can find me streaming then. If you want to support the show, you can do so in a number of ways. You can give it a 5-star rating or review on whichever podcasting app you use. It does help more people find the show, and it makes me feel warm and fuzzy. I like feeling warm and fuzzy. You can also support the show.
Lord, man.
I like feeling warm and fuzzy, Chris. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not ashamed. I will not be shamed.
I love that I threw you off. That was completely my intention.
It got me. If you want to support the show over on Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod, that will also make me feel warm and fuzzy. But no, for $1 a month, you get for $1 a month, you'll get all the episodes a little bit earlier with better audio quality, as well as access to patron voting rights, which help guide the direction of the show. I mentioned Final Fantasy X-2 earlier in the episode. That was a patron choice. An upcoming episode is going to be The Adventures of Bayou Billy for the NES. That was a patron choice. So you can do all that for just $1 a month. For $3 a month, you get everything I mentioned prior, plus patron shoutouts, which you heard at the beginning of this episode. For $4 a month, you get all the previous stuff, all the previous goodies on the previous tiers, plus 2 mini bonus episodes every month, which there's over 90 of now. We're getting close to about 100. When this comes out, it might be at 100 or close to 100. So there's a lot of content over there. And for $5 a month, you get all of it. Everything I mentioned prior, plus access to my monthly movie podcast, which right now is called Still Family, which is my monthly Fast and Furious movie podcast, where all the guests who join me aren't just friends.
They're family. What, Josh, $5 a month is less than the price of a cup of coffee. That's incredible.
And for $5 a month, you will hear Chris's voice a lot more with the Still Bonding series that I did. All 25 James Bond movies and a giant 3-hour ranking of all the Bond films is all over there on Patreon. Though I did release the ranking episode for free for everyone on the main feed. But there is 25 episodes of deep dives into the James Bond movies, and Chris was a major part of that that series. He saved my butt on numerous occasions on it. So if you like James Bond, there's a lot of content for you over at patreon.com/stillloadingpod for only $5 a month. And there's going to be more movie podcasts every month. It keeps coming out. So yeah, please go consider doing that. Patreon.com/stillloadingpod. But that's it. That is all the time I have for you on this episode of Still Loading. Thank you all once again for listening. Chris, thank you again for joining me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
And with all that said, listeners, I will see you all next time.
The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.